This classes and all the classes today of the Schus Avram Levi Ben Yetta has a birthday. Shabbos Shnas Hatzlacha. Good health. Okay, sorry for the delay. So we're starting a new mimer today. Aliela, this is yours. Oh, you have one? Okay. We're starting a new mimer today. Mrs. Yafi is sending it to you, so don't worry. It's on the way. And the mimer is Veata Tetzave. Zugesund. So this mimer is the reverse, the opposite of last mimer. Last mimer we learned Basi Legani, Tavshin Yud Aleph was the first mimer that the Rebbe said. And this mimer is the last mimer that the Rebbe gave out. In the recent years, what? Oh, so I'll take this one, yeah. In the recent years, I hope that doesn't have the same thing, let me know. In the recent years, the Rebbe didn't say Maimarim, but in these years, the Rebbe actually edited a Maimar that was said years before and published it in honor of an upcoming date. So this was actually said, if you look at the date, in 1981, Tavshin Mem Aleph. But the Rebbe never edited the Maimar previously. So he edited the Maimar in Tavshin Nun Beis. And not only edited, but he handed it out to every single man, woman, and child. And when was this done? This was done on Purim Katan. So that it means it was like 2 weeks before Chav Zayin Adar, before the Rebbe had the incident with the stroke. So basically, this Maimer by Chassidim is very dear, very precious. Every Chassid makes a point to learn the Maimer, to know the Maimer, because this is the last Maimer that the Rebbe gave us. And by the way, when the Rebbe gave out the Maimer was in a plastic case, and in the plastic case was money for tzedakah and a piece of lekach. And lekach, honey cake, is something which traditionally is only given Erev Yom Kippur. And that year, the Rebbe gave out this honey cake a few times. This was the last time. And only looking back after what happened, we realized that this year needed a lot of bracha, and therefore the Rebbe did this extra distributing of honey cake. So this Maimer was also said in connection to Purim Katan. There were two others. And the Maimer begins with the word Veata Tetzave. Now, one more little introduction. This Maimer that the Rebbe said is based, and the whole Maimer is an explanation to a Maimer of the previous Rebbe. And the Maimer of the previous Rebbe is also a famous Maimer. And that Maimer was also said on Purim Katan, but it was in 1927, Tov Reish Pei Zayin. And why is the Maimer famous? We all know that year, 1927, was in the year that the previous Rebbe was arrested. But the Maimer that he said on Purim Katan is one of the things that led to his arrest. And there's a story behind it with a lot of details. I'll just give it over briefly, is that this was the time, communism in 1927 was becoming stronger and more intense. And this was already the point where they started uprooting yeshivas and learning and anything to do with Yiddishkeit. It was becoming progressively worse and worse. And at that time, the Frierdiker Rebbe went to Moscow. And he was in Moscow, in the Lubavitcher Shul, Moscow. And at that time, this is someone who writes the story that you need a Maimer. This is not the one, I'll be able to change it later, but in the meantime, use this. This is a used one. But so the head of the community was called in by the KGB, and they were asking him a lot of questions about the previous Rebbe. Why is he here? What does he do? And what are his activities? I think he said he was by them for a few hours with questioning. And he answered all the questions the best way that he can. But as soon as he got out of the office, he immediately found the Lubavitcher Chassid and asked him to give a message that based on what he knows, he's telling the Frierdiker Rebbe to immediately leave town because the KGB is following him and they're after him. Like they're looking clearly for an excuse to arrest him. And then he writes that it was Purim Katan, and he walks by the Lubavitcher Shul and he sees the place is lit up and there are a lot of people there. And he was shocked. There's the previous Rebbe, and he's saying a mimer. And why was he shocked? Because I gave him a message that he should leave town immediately because the KGB is after him. I couldn't believe that he's not only here, he's speaking publicly, and he cracked at a crowd. And he said to himself, he's just like his father and his grandfather. They're not afraid of anything. They just do what they think is the right thing to do. And sure enough, not only was he saying a mimer, but in the mimer he was talking about having Mesiras Nefesh to teach children and not to be afraid of any decrees from the governments. And then he saw a few Russian spies there, so he left. He went away. Later, when they arrested the Frierdiker Rebbe, part of it was this mimer, that how did he have the sort of chutzpah to publicly get up in a place like Moscow, their headquarters, and speak out against not listening to the government and continuing to teach children Torah and so on and so forth. So this mimer is also a very famous mimer of the Frierdiker Rebbe. And our mimer that we're going to learn now is based on, and it's an explanation to the Frierdiker Rebbe's mimer. So the mimer is on the pasuk Veata Tetzave as Bnei Yisrael v'yikhu elecha Shem zay yizoch koses lamor lahalas ner tomid. Hashem says to Moshe, this is the first pasuk in the parsha called Tetzave, and you should command the Yidden, the children of Israel, what should they do? They should bring to you pure olive oil, and the olive should be crushed and be used for the menorah. And there should be a flame to raise a flame that'll be on fire. It'll be lit permanently. So the Rebbe asks 4 questions. And the questions on this pasuk, which means already in earlier generations, previous Rabbeim spoke about this pasuk, and they raised these questions. In all other commandments of the Torah, it says, Tzaves b'nei Yisrael, command the Yidden. This is the only place where it says, Atot Tzaves b'nei Yisrael, you should command. In other words, the other places it doesn't emphasize you are the one that's commanding, just says command them. And here it says you should command. Okay, you might think to yourself, what's the big difference? It's the same thing. He's telling Moshe to give the Jews the commandment. No, he adds Lahosef. This point that it says Ata Tetzave is le'rak balosh. It's not just a matter of the language, the grammar, the wording. It's much deeper. It's the content. When it says Va'ata Tetzave, mashma, this implies Shemoshe hu ha'metzave. This is sort of emphasizing that Moshe is the one that's giving the commandment. And this needs to be understood. Moshe hu ha'shliach. Moshe is only a shliach. Limser Yisrael as tzivra Kodesh Baruch Hu. He's there just to give over to the Yidden what Hashem commanded. He's not the commander. He's just sort of the amplifier. He's speaking in Hashem's name. So why say Ata Tetzave, you should command? He's not commanding. It should say you should give over the commandment, but that you should command. That's question number 1. And the second question is Mashakosu. They should bring to you pure olive oil. Shiaviu Hashem and Moshe. So basically it's saying that they should bring the pure olive oil to Moshe. In essence, there's a question here. Being that the lighting of the menorah, who lit the menorah? Aaron lit the menorah. He was the Kohen Gadol, not Moshe. So Hashem and Moshe. Why did they bring the oil to Moshe? Should have said, and bring the oil to Aaron. That's the second question. A third question. Masha Kosov Shemen Geime Kosas Lamor should bring pure olive oil, and the olive would be crushed. Kosis crushed Lamor for the luminary, meaning for the menorah. Also here the language is not precise. Heavily Lamemar, it should have said the language should have been differently. Shemen Lahoyer, it's oil to give light, to illuminate, not luminary. Luminary is the source of the light. And we're saying this is a light, this is oil to light up the menorah. So this is about the language, la mo'er or er. Then comes question number 4. Kam tzarech lahavin, on page 29. Kam tzarech lahavin, you also have to understand the posuk shalach rizeh, the posuk following this posuk, it says, me'erev ad boker. You should light the menorah, and it should remain lit from the evening to, when do they light the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash? You should light it every day before sundown. And they were supposed to put in enough oil that it should remain lit all night until the morning. During the day, they didn't light the menorah. The menorah was not lit during the day, only at night. So it says it should be lit from the night to the morning. Over here it says, light the menorah, it should be lit forever. Tamid means forever, all the time. Now the truth is Rashi asked the question, how could you say tamid, which means all the time? It wasn't all the time, it was only at night. During the day, there was no menorah. So Rashi answers that the word tamid can also be used for things that are not constant. They're not every second, but if it's done regularly, it's called tamid. For example, the carbon they brought every day in the morning and in the evening was called what? Carbon tamid. They didn't bring it every second of the day, but because it was brought every day, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, even Shabbos, even Yontif, even Rosh Hashanah, even Yom Kippur, every day they brought a carbon tamid. It was never interrupted, so it's called tamid. The same with the menorah, being that this was done on a regular basis every single day. They lit the menorah in the evening, so it's called tamid. Okay, so we know why it could be called tamid, but it doesn't explain why in one place, 2 psukim, one next to the other, one of them says it should be lit tamid all the time, and the other one says from the night to the morning. So now, the first thing the Rebbe is going to answer is the first question. I think I told you once, a mimer usually doesn't answer the question right away. Usually a mimer asks questions, then goes off to explain some subject for 5 pages, then even forget by that time what the question was in the first place. Then they go back at the end, and the answer is, the thing I once explained is that the reason for that is because a mimer is not an answer to a question. It's much more than that. When a mimer raises a question, the mimer gives an explanation. It means it changes the whole perspective on the subject. And once the perspective on the whole subject is changed, then you go back and you see that everything falls into place. It's not just there's a question and there's an answer. There's a question, there's an answer. Once you have a whole different perspective on the entire matter, then everything falls into place. That's the way it usually is in a mimer. It could be 4 questions, 5 questions, 8 questions, and then the mimer says, okay, let's stop. And let me explain what Yesh Mi'ayin is all about. Let me explain what Kriyas Yamsov is all about. Let me explain what Yitzis Mitzrayim is all about. And after the explanation, they look back and everything just fits right in. So here, though, is an exception. Right after the question comes the answer. Base, page 31. So the Rebbe, my father-in-law, explains this in his Maimer. And in parentheses says the famous Maimer, which is called the Kibbutz Yehudim. And he said this Maimer, Purim Cotton, Tov Reish Pei Zayin, which I just mentioned to you why it's called the famous Maimer. because it was said with Mesiras Nefesh, and this is part of what led to him being arrested, because he stood up to the authorities and openly, this was like we learned in the Mayim of Basa Dagan in Yitzchak, nothing stopped him. He went openly to speak about teaching children. By the way, in Russia, I heard this from Jews who came from Russia. It said that the biggest chet, the biggest avera, the worst crime you could commit in terms of Yiddishkeit was teaching children. Everything else, there was still some hope. Teaching children, they could have shot the person right on the spot, because that was the worst crime. And why is it the worst crime? Because we see that the Goyim, the enemies of Yidden, understood that the future of the Jewish people are the children. And if you, God forbid, uproot the foundation, the whole building collapses. And if the foundation is strong, then there's potential for the building. So outright, the Friedrich Rebbe spoke at that Fabrengen and that Maimer about teaching children and not to be intimidated by the authorities like Haman, who doesn't let you teach children. That was like the height of chutzpah, to go into Moscow and publicly, not in a cellar somewhere, publicly in front of hundreds of people, speak that way. So this Maimer explains that tzivui, the word tetzave, hu tzapse v'chibur, literally it means command. But there's another meaning to it, and it comes from the word tzapsa v'chibur. The root of the word means connection. And there are 5 places that we see that the word tzapsa is used in that context, to connect things. Zehu Veata Tetzave b'nei Yisrael, and this is the deeper meaning to the words you, Tetzave b'nei Yisrael. It doesn't, the reason why it says Ata is to imply not only is Moshe Rabbeinu commanding the Yidden, but who mekasher u'mechaber as b'nei Yisrael of Eretz Sof. That Moshe Rabbeinu's function is to make the connection, the bond between Yidden and Eretz Sof. So the word Tetzave now is being translated as connecting, and that's the avodah of the shepherd of the Jewish people, the leader of the Jewish people, that he's here to connect us with Hashem. And not only does he answer the first question, now he's already answering the second question. And through Moshe Rabbeinu giving hashpah, providing us with spiritual sustenance, which in this case is Shemekasha Oisam Eir Sof, he's connecting us with Eir Sof, with Hashem's infinite light. This actually brings additional spiritual greatness to Moshe Rabbeinu. Normally, a mashpia makabel means this person is the recipient, and the other person is the one that gives. So the giver is the one who is sort of on top, and the recipient is beneath him receiving. So Moshe Rabbeinu is giving us and connecting us to Eir Sof. But as a result of that, Moshe Rabbeinu himself is going to rise to a much higher spiritual level. He will be receiving something which he didn't have before. First of all, this is a general principle that I'm sure you've heard before, where one of the sages in the Gemara said, I learned a lot from my teachers, but I learned even more from my colleagues. And the most I've gained wisdom was from my students, which means here he is the teacher teaching the students, but as a result of teaching the students, he got more wisdom. He had more depth and more understanding to what he's teaching because he's teaching the students. So here he's the mashpia to the students, but actually through the students, he gets hashpah. He gets more depth and more knowledge than he had before. So same here with Moshe. He's connecting Yidden to Eir Sof, but as a result of that, he is going to be gaining something which he didn't have before spiritually. And he explains it, the Moshe of Yisrael, him dugmas reish v'regel. Moshe and the Yidden are like a head and the feet. So what he doesn't say, but it's based on this premise, that all the Yidden are really one. We're all one entity. And the Alter Rebbe actually uses this analogy in Tanya, that in a generation, there are tens of thousands of people, everybody's on a different level, but we're one single identity. So just like in the human body, there are different organs, and every organ has a different function. And some organs have more sort of complicated functions than others, and some of them more vital functions like the brain and the heart, the liver, and others are more simpler, but nevertheless, we're all part of one single body, one single identity. So the same is with Moshe Rabbeinu, that Moshe Rabbeinu and the Yidden are one, but Moshe is the head, and the Yidden are the other organs of the body. I once saw a sikha from the Rebbe, which is actually related to this, that we know that one of the biggest controversies always was and is today as well about Hasidim is their relationship to the Rebbe. How is it okay? So there's one argument that why is it necessary? Why can't I just serve Hashem? It's between me and Hashem. What do I need to also connect to a tzaddik? There's another argument that goes a step further and says not only it's not necessary, it's actually should be prohibited because chas v'sholem, I'm putting someone between me and Hashem. So for example, is a Yid allowed to daven to an angel? If I know that this angel is in charge of fire, this angel is in charge of water, this angel is in charge of parnasa, my sustenance, am I allowed to daven to the angel that he should give me parnasa? The answer is no. That would be chas v'sholem like avodah zarah. So the question is, why am I allowed to ask the Rebbe to daven for me? True, I'm not davening to the Rebbe, but I'm still asking him to daven for me. So one of the answers given to this is from the Chassam Sofer. It's interesting, Chassam Sofer was not a chassid, but on the other hand, he was one of the greatest authorities of halacha in the last 250 years. Anybody today that is going to give a halachic decision about something on a certain subject, if he wants to look through it thoroughly, he will definitely look to see, so what does the Chassam Sofer say about it? Everyone agrees, and everyone accepts him as the greatest halachic authority. So someone asked him this question: how are you allowed to go to a tzaddik and ask him to pray for you? Why isn't that like asking an angel? And he gives an interesting mashal. He says, when I ask an angel, I'm putting someone between me and Hashem, but a tzaddik is different. How is a tzaddik different? Imagine, he said, if a person has to go in to speak to the king, right? Hypothetically speaking, if the king said, I can't accept the whole person, send in one organ to represent the whole body. Which organ would we send in? The elbow, the toes, the nose? We send in the brain. The brain is the best part of the body. He'll know how to speak to a king, what to say, and how to present his case. So he says, when we ask a tzaddik to daven for us, we're not asking someone else to daven for us. That's us. He's just the best part of us is presenting our case to the king. Yeah.
When that which you daven for happens and you ask the Rebbe to daven for you, how do you not get caught up in thanking the Rebbe for what happened? Or do you thank Hashem for having the Rebbe that you daven to?
How don't you get caught up? Is because it's just so simple that all of Yiddishkeit is based on that. In other words, when you look at the Chumash, and the Chumash talks about all the miracles that Moshe Rabbeinu performed. So here we're talking so much about Moshe Rabbeinu performing miracles, we can ask the same question. Can't we get caught up a little bit thinking that it's Moshe and not Hashem? And the answer is, it wouldn't even dawn on anybody. It's so clear that Moshe Rabbeinu, he's so transparent, and all he's doing is constantly telling the Yidden about Hashem, that it's clear to them that Hashem is performing the miracles through Moshe Rabbeinu.
Sometimes I think it's not clear to me because any house I go to, there's like a massive, like so many actually paintings or photographs of the Rebbe. Sometimes I think it's confusing because you have to have a lot of respect, and you go to the Ohel and everything, and it's like almost easier to, like, I know God forbid, like the Rebbe is not Hashem, but there's a reason why we always try not to attribute human qualities to Hashem, because Hashem does not resemble a human. So then if you see the Rebbe, it's like so much easier to like picture that associate that holiness with a human being.
Right, but all of Yiddishkeit is that way. I can't connect to Hashem unless I eat a physical matzah, chew it, digest it in my stomach. I can't connect to Hashem unless I put physical tefillin on my head. And I can't connect to Hashem unless I go to the Beis Hamikdash. In those days, physically, I have to go there, bow down on the floor in the Beis Hamikdash. So it's by Yidden, it's clear. I think I once gave this mashal. It's like somebody would say, I just saw something very strange, and maybe you could explain it to me. I saw you were at the airport and you met your friend, which you haven't seen for 3 years, and she ran over and you embraced her coat. I was wondering, why were you embracing her coat so tightly? What would you say? You say, I don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean I embraced her coat? And then you explain, I didn't really embrace the coat. In the coat was a person. And I was really thinking about the person that's inside the coat. Now tell me, is that the normal way people think? Like when you embrace somebody and you're thinking, I'm not embracing the coat, it's actually the person that's inside the coat. Okay, no problem. It's so normal, it's so natural, it's so understood that actually if somebody would go and explain it, then it would become a little bit strange. Especially when you learn Chassidus and you're learning all day long about Hashem and Hashem's greatness. And Hashem creates the world every second, and every single person in the world, and every single article in the world, and every detail in the world is non-existent without Hashem. We don't need to even explain it because it's so understood. I guess when we're first introduced to the idea, it's a little bit confusing. But once a person is involved in Yiddishkeit, and especially learning Chassidus, it's so clear, it's so normal, it's so natural that it's not even necessary to explain, because of course, everything that Moshe does is Hashem, and Moshe is just the transparent channel through which Hashem is giving us what he's giving us. The fact that there are a lot of pictures of the Rebbe, well, if you walk into any house, you'll find hundreds of pictures of their children, their parents, especially their children. And you ask them, I don't understand, what do you need so many pictures for? And the mother's going to say, well, this is my daughter when she was in college. This is when she was in high school. This is when she was in camp. This is when she was born. Here we were on a trip in Honolulu, and here we went to a trip to Florida. Here was with this. What do you need so many pictures for? Couldn't one picture be enough? The question wouldn't even dawn on anybody. These are my children. This gives me pleasure, and this inspires me. So some people like to have pictures of lions. Some people like to have heads of animals hanging in their head, and that inspires them. Some people like pictures of landscapes, and that inspires them. And by me, my children, that inspires me. So for a chassid, having the picture of the Rebbe is a spiritual inspiration. And it's very exciting. Here the Rebbe is giving out Kusha Bracha. Here the Rebbe is Farbrengen. Here the Rebbe is waving his hand for the singing. Here the Rebbe is saying a mimer. Just no different than anything else. The idea that a picture is associated with something of worship doesn't apply nowadays. Maybe hundreds of years ago, when there were no pictures, the only pictures were of the Havdalah Avodah Zarah. That was the only thing where they had pictures. Or kings. Nobody regular had a picture. Look, we have no picture of all the tzaddikim that lived. You have the Alter Rebbe's picture, that's an exception. We have pictures of Baal Shem Tov. People say they don't think it's accurate, but we know the Alter Rebbe's picture is accurate. Do you know how we know?
From the prison.
What? Yeah. This picture, when the Alter Rebbe was in jail, they, just like in America, in any country, when someone is in jail, they take a picture. In those days, there was an artist who drew a picture of the Alter Rebbe. And how did we get it? Because the Rebbe Marash, there's a story, a long story, how the Rebbe Marash once went to Petersburg to a very important meeting with Russian ministers and officers. And by the meeting, one of them really liked the Rebbe Marash, and he said to him, I'd like you to come to my house. I want to show you my art collection. It's something interesting I want to show you. And he went with him the next day. And he showed him, he said his father was a big art collector and he has interesting pictures. And he showed him a picture of a rabbi. And underneath there was a date. And he said, who's this picture? And he said, there was a rabbi who was arrested because he was involved in making some sort of revolution against the Tsar. And my father, he worked in the jail and he loved art. So he asked him if he can take this picture. This is the picture they made of him when he was arrested. And the date was pretty similar. The Rebbe Marash never saw the Alter Rebbe. When he went back home, he told his father, the Tzemach Tzedek, about the picture. And he said, do everything you can to get it. So he wasn't going to Petersburg for a while, but the next time he went to Petersburg, he searched for that minister, and they told him that he moved to a different city. And we went to the other city, and he finally found him. He asked him for permission to borrow the picture for 2 weeks. He gave him the picture. He brought it to Tzemach Tzedek. Tzemach Tzedek said, it's as accurate and as precise as could be. Every detail of the face is very precise. It's a perfect picture. So we know that this picture, I mean, a little bit, it's a picture of a picture of a picture today, but the original initial picture, I don't think we have it, is from the Alter Rebbe. But years ago, no one really had pictures of tzaddikim. No one did pictures. Not only tzaddikim, nobody had pictures. What?
Why is he looking up? Like, why is he, like, his eyes? Is there, I don't know, is any stories about it?
I didn't hear anything about it. But the point is that today, pictures have nothing to do with idol worship. Pictures are just things that are so easily we have in our house now, Baruch Hashem, with this device. You don't even need anything. Every second, people are knocking pictures right, left, and center. And we have millions of pictures. So just like children inspire me, friends inspire me, vacations inspire me. So the Rebbe inspires me, and that's why we have the pictures. Only when a person is not so familiar with the concept, they compare it to Chas v'Shalom, other religions, and therefore it looks strange. But when you learn Yiddishkeit, Torah, mitzvahs, it's so clear that everything about the Rebbe is all about inspiring us to love and fear Hashem. So it's not because it's easier or less confusing. It's just this is the way that we connect to Hashem. A person who is himself on fire with love and fear of Hashem, he's able to inspire us to have love and fear of Hashem. So basically, if you learn a little bit more Chassidus, the more Chassidus we learn, it becomes more simple and more natural. But we have this class in level 1, we're going to have it after Pesach, called the Chassidic Way of Life. Or anyone that wants, I can show it to you now. I have sheets downstairs where it says in the Chumash, a few places, that the Yidden said that Moshe Rabbeinu, he's amazing. Look what he did for us. He gave us the man, he split the sea, he gave us the Torah. Moshe Rabbeinu did this, or Hashem did all these things? So clearly, it was so clear to everyone that it's all one, that you didn't even have to explain it. Of course, Hashem gave it to us through Moshe Rabbeinu. See, when you're looking at a screen, Zoom, and you see somebody there, and you're laughing, and you're motioning to them, is it to the glass or to the person? Maybe it's to the glass. And then there's something wrong with you. You're laughing to a glass, you're looking at a glass, making motions to a glass. It's so clear, the person on the other end of the screen, I see them, they see me. It's so clear that it's about the person, not about the glass. But someone who doesn't know, let's say someone who lived 500 years ago, never saw these things in his life, and walks into the room and sees me looking at the glass and laughing and making motions, he would think that I need a doctor, because which normal person does such things, talking to a glass? But once you're familiar with the idea, even if you don't know exactly what kind of device this is, it's so clear that you know it's not the glass, it's what's behind the glass, which is the person. Same thing with tzaddikim. It's so clear that it's not at all, doesn't get in the way. So Moshe and the Yidden are bedugmas reish v'regel. So we see the same with the head and the feet in the human body. Where do we see that the Yidden are compared to the feet? There's a pasuk where it says, Sheish meyes elef raglei ha'om asher anechi bekirbei. It's a pasuk in Chumash, where Moshe Rabbeinu says, 600,000 feet of the people that I'm amongst them. So it means he's comparing the Yidden to the feet, meaning that he's the head, and the Yidden are part of his body, but they're the feet. Moshe Areish Lahem. So let's take this analogy of the body, the head and the feet. So the head, they lead the body, they give direction to the body, they're the head. Page 33. So even though the head is superior and this gives guidance and direction to the feet where they should go, but on the other hand, the feet contribute to the head. The feet are able to take the head to such a place where the head couldn't go. So if chas v'shalom, there's a danger. And the head, the brain understands that right now where I am is a dangerous place, I have to run away. The head could do nothing about it. Who could protect the head and who could save the head's life? The feet, by running away. So in one way, the head contributes to the feet. In the other way, the feet contribute to the head. The feet can take the head to a place where it can't get there on its own. The same as by Moshe and the Yidden, that Yisrael, through the Yidden, which are the feet, we're actually bringing a certain elevation in Moshe. And that's what it means. The feet are the Yidden and the head is Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay, Rabbi Gosinski is here already?
Yes.
Okay, so we will let him take over. Rabbi Gosinski, thank you for a wonderful Shabbos. I heard amazing reports for Shabbos. Thank you. Okay.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Yeah, I was trying to.
I have to leave a bit earlier today. I'm sorry, so 9:55 session. What?
Oh, Papa's sitting here?